Distinguished judges, respected educators, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Najela binti Umar. I'm from the Islamic Education Program Group 1 August 2025 until 2030 intake from IPG Campus Kuningan. I would like to begin my introduction. A classroom is more than just four walls, rows of desks, and a whiteboard. It is a place where curiosity is nurtured, confidence is built, and dreams begin to take shape. Within this space, teachers inspire minds, friendships are formed, and knowledge is transformed into opportunity. Research has consistently shown that a positive classroom environment enhances learning, increases student engagement, and improves academic achievement. Simply put, classrooms matter. However, throughout much history, not every child was given equal access to this powerful learning environment. While mainstream students learned and played and grew together, many students with disabilities experienced a very different reality. Their classroom was separate, their opportunities were limited, and their voices were often unheard. This raised an important question. Can education truly be called inclusive when some learners remain outside the circle? Today, I would like to share a vision that seeks to answer that question, a vision known as a classroom for everyone. Before we discuss why inclusion matters, we must first understand what it truly means. Inclusive education is the practice of educating students with special educational needs alongside their mainstream peers within the same learning environment. However, inclusion is not simply about placing students in the same classroom. It is about ensuring meaningful participation and equal opportunities. In reality, inclusive education is a flexible and thoughtful approach where students are carefully assessed based on their abilities, learning needs, and readiness to participate. Students from the Special Education Integrated Program, or called PBKI, who demonstrate readiness in certain subjects may join mainstream students through inclusive education. Rather than defining students by their disabilities, inclusive education recognizes their strengths and provides opportunities for them to learn in an environment where they can thrive. To understand inclusion, we must first understand what exists before it. For decades, many countries practiced educational segregation. Students with disabilities were educated separately in special schools, with minimal interaction with mainstream students. Although these schools were created with good intentions and specialized support, segregation often led to social isolation and limited participation in society. As awareness grew, educators and policymakers began questioning whether separation was truly the best approach. This led to educational integration. In Malaysia, this was reflected through the Special Education Integrated Program, or called PPKI, where students were placed in mainstream school but still learned in separated classrooms. While this was an important improvement, barriers still remain. Students shared the same school compound, but not the same learning experience. The shift towards inclusive education was not driven by ideology alone, it was driven by evidence. Before the 1990s, international reports suggested that fewer than 10% of children with disabilities in developing countries had access to formal education. Many stayed at home because schools were inaccessible, unprepared, or unable to support their needs. As a result, opportunities were limited, expectations were low, and potential was often overlooked. This created a system that unintentionally excluded many learners from meaningful participation in education and society. Recognizing these challenges, the global education community took action. In 1994, UNESCO organized the World Conference on Special Needs Education in Salamanca, Spain. From this conference emerged the Salamanca Statement, endorsed by 92 governments, which declared that all children, regardless of differences, have the right to be welcome and supported in education. This historic moment transformed inclusive education from an idea into a global movement. In Malaysia, this commitment was strengthened through the Education Act 1996 and the Malaysia Education Blueprint, paving the way for greater inclusion in mainstream education. Before, in the end, inclusive education is not just about access. It is about dignity, it is about belonging, and it is about ensuring that no child is left behind. Many people often ask, how does inclusive education actually work in your classroom? Well, inclusive education is not a one-size-fits-all system. It is a flexible approach based on each student's abilities and needs. It is commonly implemented in two main ways. The first is full inclusion, where students learn entirely in mainstream classroom alongside their peers. with supports provided when needed. The second is partial inclusion, where students divide their learning between mainstream classes and special education settings such as PPKI, depending on the subject and their readiness. For example, a student with autism may excel in English and participate in mainstream English classes, but may require additional support in mathematics within specialized settings. Beyond these approaches, inclusive education is supported by four key dimensions. First is curriculum adoption, where materials and assessments are adjusted to meet different learning needs. Second is teaching and learning support, where teachers use differentiated strategies such as visual, auditory, and hands-on learning methods. Third is placement flexibility, ensuring students are placed according to readiness rather than levels. Fourth is environmental and social support, which includes accessibility and efforts to build acceptance among peers. Together, these dimensions ensure inclusion is not just physical placement, but meaningful learning and participation. Ultimately, inclusive education ensures that every student receives the supports they need to succeed. Fortunately, the story does not end there. Research from UNESCO and World Bank show that inclusive education brings significant benefits when properly implemented. Academically, students with special educational needs often perform better in inclusive environments. Socially, they develop stronger communication skills, confidence, and peer relationships. Emotionally, they experience a stronger sense of belonging and acceptance. Importantly, inclusive education also benefits mainstream students. Global studies show that inclusion does not negatively affect academic performance. Instead, it improves empathy, cooperation, tolerance, and social responsibility. Some students also highlight improvements in teamwork and problem-solving skills, skills essential for real life. In other words, inclusive education benefits not only some learners, but all learners. Despite its progress, inclusive education still faces challenges. We often ask whether students are ready for inclusive classrooms. Perhaps the real question is, are we as an educator ready to create classrooms that are truly inclusive? The success of inclusive education depends heavily on teacher competence and strong support system. Teachers therefore need continuous training to support diverse learners effectively. For example, in teaching fractions, different students require different approach. Some may learn through numbers, others through visuals, structure steps, or sign language support. The content remains the same, but the pathway must be adapted. In addition, some schools still face limitation in infrastructure and specialized resources. Facilities such as ramps, accessible toilets, braille materials, and assistive devices are not always available. There is also shortage of specialized personnel such as educational psychologists, therapists, and teaching assistants. While trained teachers can adapt lessons, specialists provide deeper and targeted support. Without these systems, students may be present in classrooms, but not fully able to access learning. Therefore, true inclusion is not just about opening classrooms' doors, it is about ensuring every learner can fully participate and succeed. This requires collaboration between teachers, parents, policymakers, and society. Most importantly, it requires a shift in mindset. The question is no longer whether students with special needs belong in mainstream classrooms. The real question is how we ensure they thrive there. Ladies and gentlemen, at the beginning of my speech, I described a classroom as a place where dreams begin. Today, I leave you with this thought. A classroom should never be defined by who is excluded. It should be defined by who is welcome. Because every child, regardless of ability, deserves the opportunity to learn, to grow, and to belong. Inclusive education is not just an educational reform, it is a reflection of a society we choose to build. A society that values dignity over difference, a society that recognizes potential over limitation, and a society where every learner has a place. After all, the best classroom is not the one that teaches the most students. It is the one that leaves no student behind. I hope my sharing has been beneficial to everyone. Thank you for your attention. That's all from me.